Today, we're speaking with Kevin Marcus Miller, who is a music producer, songwriter, and entrepreneur from Seattle, Washington in the United States. He has been making music for over 15 years, always with the intention of uplifting and educating his audiences. We had a wonderful conversation of what it means to be somebody who has a defib, who is a Black man, and also what empathy and inclusivity looks like. Go ahead and enjoy this wonderful episode. And as I mentioned early on, he is the one that created the music for this podcast. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Inclusive Storytelling Podcast. Today is my guest, Kevin Marcus Miller. Now, hey, thanks so much for being here, my friends. And gosh, I am so excited because, folks, if you are digging the dope jam that is in the podcast, when we come into the podcast and leave, guess who was the one that did the music? It was Kevin. So Kevin, thank you. Thanks for being basically my music composer and my music. So thank you. And so, gosh, let's just jump right into it. You have such a history in your life. So just for folks, Kevin and I have known each other now for several months. He's absolutely wonderful. And there was an incident that changed your life, basically. Tell us more, Kevin.
So for me, 2019 was very transformational for me. I was 25 at the time, and I was struggling at work to get my work-life balance in order. So I went to go play some basketball, and I'm coming up the court, and I don't really actually remember the events myself. So this is the recollection from what others told me. But they said what happened was, as I was coming up the basketball court, I actually pretty much my heart stopped completely, and I went on one knee and then fell over and had a sudden cardiac arrest at 25.
Wow.
I woke up 3 days later, and the emotion that I felt when I woke up is very hard to describe. It's kind of like hitting rock bottom, but it's a little deeper than that.
Yeah.
That doesn't quite describe the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of embarrassment and shame, because I basically felt like my whole life I had been living someone else's dream.
Wow.
Wasn't what I wanted. So.
Right. It wasn't what you wanted. And so I know that's changed, and we're going to get into that. So was that around the time when you started building your music career, or was that before and it kind of launched? Unfortunately, this unfortunate episode launched you into thinking in different ways.
So my music career was started and successful much prior to that. And my identity was all wrapped up in music. And I thought that, the songs that I'd made and the TV shows that I'd worked on pretty much identified who I was in the world. And, I had a really hard time figuring out who I am outside of that.
Wow. Well, let's dig into that. So you had this, awful event, not even a year ago, we're still very new in terms of the year. And then you had this other sort of persona, this other person. So what did that entail? Who was Kevin prior to this event?
Yeah, I'd say the best way to describe it is I was basically who I had been told was successful or happy, but it wasn't really my version. My version was who I am today, which is an entrepreneur, someone that's inspiring, but true to himself, authentic. The old Kevin was more so chasing an accolade or a representation that looked good from that bird's eye view, but it really wasn't actually the life that I wanted for me. Mm-hmm. So I was doing things like working corporate jobs that I didn't want to be at, bouncing around contract gigs, being around corporations and racism that I, experienced on the day-to-day that everyone has to go through, especially as a young Black man in tech. But the truth is, I was willingly putting myself in those positions and staying because I thought that's what, I was blessed to be at those places. And that was just, But the choice that I made to be who I am as an entrepreneur and walk away from that life, you know, meant a lot, meaning like walking away from certain friends and circles and expectations and trajectories in life and career. And so that was who I
Right.
really was not me.
Right. And it's interesting for me because I know you a little bit and I've read about you. And so you are tagged and you still are tagged as a music producer. And you still do it because you make your own music and you did music for me.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is what you've done to date to take what you love and still continue it and also create different paths for you.
Yeah.
Right? So let's talk a little bit about how much your music work has changed from
Yeah.
years ago to today. I'm
Wow.
interested in that journey.
So the biggest thing that's different is prior to the incident, everything that I did musically was to get some kind of result, whether it was a placement or money.
Yeah. And what do you mean by placement?
So a placement is landing your song on a TV network or a sync placement. They call it synchronization. And that there's two sides to the record, the music industry from a music producer standpoint, the record side, like where artists hang out and that kind of world. And then there's the TV side where you can make composer music and scoring and things like that. So I was on the composer side. And
Mm-hmm.
so to date, I've done about 45 different TV shows. And so prior to my heart incident, um, every time I ever opened a DAW, digital audio workstation to make music, it was for the sole purpose of that. It was never for enjoyment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How many years did you do that?
Oh,
Too
wow.
too long?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to count. So, the first time I used to work at Guitar Center when I was in high school, and that was the goal then was to do it for that reason. So I'd say at this point I'm probably about 13 years.
Wow. So for 13 years, you essentially were living somebody else's music production dream.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's a long time. My goodness. And so
Yeah.
that means you started young as well. So you've
Yeah.
been looking into music and doing production for a very long time.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how that's evolved, in terms of where you are with what you're doing, music and other things today. How does that look like for Kevin Miller 2020, Kevin Miller 2021?
So, I think the biggest thing for me was I always felt this weird kind of embarrassment with music because I don't know how to play like piano traditionally or have certain skills. My music theory knowledge is very limited, but where I excelled was all the electronic aspects, so like DJing and beat making. And so I got into that really early when I was a kid. And I excelled at that, and I wanted to be like a famous rapper. That was like kind of the vision when I first started. And I used
Sure.
to rap when I was a kid in church as well. So I do like Christian rap in church, and then I made some CDs and passed them out in junior high. Sold CDs. I made even back then I made money from those CDs as a junior high kid.
Right. Right.
And just saying that out loud is so weird. Like, whoa, I was trying to make money as a kid. Whoa.
Right, right.
Oh,
You were understanding the game. You were understanding the different process and how to monetize. But
yeah.
it's interesting. Do you think back then doing that work, really fed your heart back then?
No, because I remember
Mm-mm.
sitting there most of the time upset that I wasn't working.
Wow. Wow.
Overwhelmingly. And so that would come out in different ways,
Sure.
whether it came out in the music or came out in aggression or, sadness, whatever. It always would come out because I felt like I wasn't successful and I should be. That was
Right.
always the feeling. And then after the heart incident, that need to be successful in that way went away.
Wow. And talk about resiliency. Yeah, I feel like you've had this resiliency most of your life, if not all. no matter what, selling those, making those CDs, then selling them, getting them out to people. That takes resiliency. That is, not a lot of us have those stories.
I remember too, like I actually, I sold a CD, and I always remember this when I tell the stories. I remember these kids throwing in junior high, throwing my CDs in the garbage and then
Oh.
pushing me into a locker.
Oh.
You know what I mean? And I just remember that feeling. And that's basically in a nutshell, you know, who I really was, but also how I identified
Mm-hmm.
as a loser.
Wow.
It didn't matter if I was on TV. I still felt like that kid.
Right, right. So let's expand on that a little bit more. You weren't feeling fulfilled. You were unfortunately feeling like this loser.
Yep.
And then you start growing and you start getting some success,
Yep.
right? You did get some success. So I want to talk just a little bit of, and it's hard for me to use the word success
Right.
because I don't think that's the word we would use today. But to the outside world, to this bird's eye view that you said, it would look like success. So when did this quote unquote success come to you?
Yeah. So I remember it. I'll never forget. I was a student manager at a coffee shop in college. I got a phone call it was the summertime, and I was doing an internship in the marketing department. I got a phone call, and it's this music publisher that found me online, and she called me. I had never talked to her before on the phone, just email.
Wow.
She said, "Yo, congratulations, you're in the big leagues now. You're in a movie. It's gonna be in theaters. You're gonna take your family, and you're gonna see your name in the credits."
Wow.
I didn't believe her at first. I was like, hold on a second, can you explain this to me? Hold on a second.
Wait, what? Yeah. Wait, what is happening right now?
Yeah. So when I got that call, I knew everything was going to be different, and it was. So I went back into work, and I remember when I started telling, people started figuring it out and finding it out, how different people treated me when I went back into work.
Really? Was it that instantaneous?
Yeah. So basically, there was faculty members of
Mm-hmm.
the college, and they'd start pointing to the other students that were shopping. You guys know this guy's famous, right? That's checking out your stuff. And they were dead serious. They were not
Wow.
mocking me. You know what I mean? Because I felt
Wow.
mocked first, because that was my default. It's like,
Right.
oh, they're mocking me, just
Yes.
like the kid in junior high. That was my. And then I realized that they actually were starstruck. It
Wow.
took me a while to realize that, like, a lot of these people were actually not trying to clown on me. They were starstruck.
Wow.
And
Wow.
then it started getting to a level where I was literally a face card, and
Mm-hmm.
I had such a high level of privilege. I could reschedule exams. I could get into other people's houses for parties
Oh,
just by my
wow.
face. I could talk to law enforcement and be drunk and belligerent and having fun in college. And they just be like, oh, that's Kevin. He's just having a good time.
Wow. Wow. So you go from making all this music for 13 years, but your heart's not into it, but you're still doing it. Then
Yep.
in college, you get success and your music gets
Mhm.
onto a movie. Which movie?
It's called Almost Christmas, featuring Gabriel Union. It was one of her breakout roles in 2016.
So no big deal, just Gabriel Union, right? Only her. And then you find out, other people find out, and you are now treated differently.
Yeah.
Do you think that the external amount of accolades you're getting translated to internal changes in your head or the way you spoke or thought about yourself?
No, it just gave me enough confidence to not let the little younger kid Kevin show up as much. So the
Wow.
insecurity would not be as heavy. That's all.
Wow. And so and it's interesting, as a Black man, you recognized the privilege you were getting
Yeah.
from being that person and being in
Yeah.
a movie and with somebody like Gabrielle Union and having that name. And it's interesting because you saw the flip. You saw the flip in the people and a little bit in you as well. That is absolutely fascinating. So I want to talk about this because this is about inclusivity.
Right.
In your long time of music production, now, having your music be in an amazing movie, what is the music industry doing when it comes to being inclusive? This is of different types of people. We spoke about women identifying folks, LGBT folks that may be trans. What are your thoughts on the welcoming nature or unwelcoming nature of the music industry from your perspective?
So hip hop is the lane that I'm pretty much in. And the weird thing it's such a weird thing. It's like so there's like hip hop within the songwriter side of TV and film. In that specific lane, it's harder for black and brown people to have success in that lane. It's easier for a white dude to rap in that lane.
Wow. And
White.
is that mean like the M&Ms of the world?
So it's actually like the Macklemores of the world.
Got it. Got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
He was the second person I was going to say.
It's exactly who it is the Macklemores. And actually, like, you'll see they call them briefs, right? So you'll get a brief from a publisher or somebody who's looking for music, and an overwhelming majority of the time, the reference song and the brief of what they're looking for is a corny white rap song imitation of a black rap song.
Wow. And
So I've noticed over time that the cornier I intentionally made my voice, or the more I altered it to be white passing, I would get more placements that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Talk about exclusivity. Talk about discrimination.
Yeah.
That's quite awful, really, to still have whiteness as the standard in a genre. in hip hop, of all the genres, to have white as the standard, even in hip hop.
Yeah.
Wow. So what about how hip hop, and this is going to be from your perspective, what about how hip hop respects or disrespects or anything between with women or women identifying folks?
Yeah, that's a loaded one. I'd say the biggest TV commercials I've seen on the planet and the best briefs come from white women attempting to rap for the first time because they prefer to have the white girl rap than the black girl rap.
Wow. And what about music videos? I just want your opinion, because for me, my opinion of many music videos that I see, I can't watch them just because of the denigration of the women that are treated as objects. I'm like, wow, who is this for? And I know it's not for me. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so on the record side, which I'm not involved in, I have heard lots of stories, and I think people need to really stop blaming. There's like this thing where we blame women who make that choice, right?
Right.
We have no idea why or how, but we need to like respect the fact that that was a choice that they were allowed to make, and so we don't have to like shame them. And it's also a part of a negative system because men are hypersexualizing women and doing, this is how it's like always been, and that eventually, well, it will change. But I know that there also needs to not be judgment on women who do decide to do that. Like the judgment shouldn't be on the woman; it should be on the system
and the industry. 100%. Kudos to that. If I was applauding, you'd be getting a standing ovation right now. I remember some time ago, this might have been when I was in college, I remember watching a documentary. And it was about making hip hop and hip hop music and videos. And I remember there was a news clipping about folks that were doing a music video and it looked like it was men and male identifying folks. And they just put an open call out to the neighborhood looking for women with very little clothes that would come and dance for free on the video. And women would come for a chance to be having that exposure to who knows, to have somebody see them, to maybe get some, to maybe get a career out of dancing, etc. So yeah, I remember that was super eye-opening for me when I was like, dang, wow, basically an open casting call for free, and folks are looking at it as an opportunity to maybe advance themselves and showcase their talents and their skills.
It's definitely weird. It's kind of like there's like a fine line between what the world perceives as entertainment versus someone's actual livelihood. And if we're not in their shoes, then it's really hard to know what that line is, and really isn't our place to say. So that's definitely something I've learned over time, because I would be lying if I said, I've never judged, because I definitely,
100%.
And then like, whoa,
And, and I noticed this, I'll be very transparent. I was in a Clubhouse room a couple of weeks ago, and not music related, but we were talking about the show Indian Matchmaker, which is on Netflix.
I thought.
And it was a group of South Asians, mainly women identifying South Asians. And people were, very much about their opinions about the show. So from folks, and very valid, saying it's doing a lot of harm, it's very heterosexist, and we need to speak up about the harms that show is doing and the stereotypes is perpetuating. Totally agree. There was another person that came on, and I thought she was very brave, and she also said that, hey, look, these are someone's truth. So let's not focus on so-and-so's doing bad. Let's have a conversation. But that show is someone's truth. And when you take a look at the people that are making that show on the production end, they've done a lot, and they're not trying to put this out there that's harmful. Now, I'm a big, huge fan, of course, that intention and impact are two different things.
Yeah.
And just because we don't intend to harm does not mean that there was a harmful impact, and we should address it. But what was important, which I think you're talking about as well, was that there is this space where it is somebody's truth. And we can let that shine, and these different voices can all have a conversation. And I remember walking away from that being, okay, let's not focus on each other. Let's focus on the industry that allows this and the isms to continue, and let's fight the power that way.
I see. So I wonder if that's real inclusive, because here's the thing, all the people in that room, a lot of them were probably, racial justice warriors or people that are fighting the good fight, but their opinion by nature, because it's only thinking of one way or one walk, by nature is excluding, even though that's not the intention, which is such a weird thing to think.
It's very deep.
Right? And it always is like an issue, because there's never going to be, in my opinion, there's never going to be a way to get around your own bias like that.
Yeah.
Unless
it's hard.
Yeah, unless you just think you're perfect. I just don't think I am,
I'm not. And of course, with a podcast like this, I want to open up the conversations about what equity looks like and what is harm, understanding it. And we can't take away people's truths on any spectrum or anything in between. But we can definitely have some great equity. We can have inclusivity, and we can also come from a place, for me, around radical empathy, which is the ability to look at others from a non-judgmental space, and a space where you can also learn for yourself by engaging with others.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's great. So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions, and this is loaded again. But again, this is Kevin's perspective. These are my perspectives from your experience and, where you land in the rap and hip hop genres. How do you think that that genre is in regards to LGBT inclusion, trans inclusion, etc.?
Mm. Ooh, yeah, that's a
Woo-wee!
well. I think the truth of it is part of the reason why I stopped making rap music or attempting to be an artist and working on the production side was because of how embarrassed I was by just everything with rap music, from the level of unwillingness to respect women, from the just everything. Like there's so many layers to it, but ultimately I think it really boils down to just like some of these folks that are in the industry, that's really their reality. Like that's actually the world they operate in, is treating women that way and having women around them all day. And there's just like a whole different environment world that I've never been exposed to in real life.
Right, right. In your real life, it's like, no, I love my mom. I love my sister. I love my
Yeah.
partner. What are we doing here?
Yeah. So I don't even know. I think, but then again, it also makes sense given the where hip hop came from,
hmm The
right?
leaders and
The
where they
lead,
came from. Yep, and
look
where
at
it
all the
originated.
forefathers. It's like, they were not supporting, they weren't down with the cause like that.
Right. Unfortunately,
Unfortunately,
unfortunately. And I will say, I do think that this generation is coming up is very different
very.
and very, right? Because I'm hearing some of the raps coming out. I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. Wow. And
Who's
there,
your favorite? Do you have any favorites?
oh gosh, who sings Mood right now?
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't know his name, but I know the song.
Yeah, so my favorite song right now is Mood. And
Yep.
you can feel this emotion and you can feel the anger, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like, wow, he's not being really disrespectful. Like he's not calling her a B, but he's stating a fact. And he also has like a very woke line in there about the interaction. And I was like, okay, I can get into this. Like I'm feeling this. I understand where that's coming from and the anger and how real it is, and it's not done in a derogatory way. I was like, okay, it's on repeat, right? It's
Yeah.
totally on repeat.
I think for me, the thing that I like about, like, my favorite artist, I would say, is probably Drake.
hmm
And an interesting story. Part of the reason I got into that, my song got on that movie, was because they were looking for a song that sounded like one of Drake's songs.
Wow.
So I have a lot
Wow.
to thank from him. You know what I mean? Basically, the brief itself was a Drake song, Jumpman, at the time. And
Wow.
because, I understood like kind of his writing style and like what they meant by that, I was able to deliver that so quickly back, just like that, and be like, this is what you're looking for.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, and I've listened to Drake and I can stomach him. So there's nothing where I'm like, "Oh no, why are you
Yeah,
talking?" Like it's
it feels
uh,
like that's really his life.
yeah.
He's not
Yeah.
like, I'm killing everybody. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about like,
Yeah,
and his
be
feelings
this.
about women, and it's like, yeah, I can
Yeah.
understand that
Yeah.
being that's
Be
what.
this, be that. It's like, oh, okay. I
Yeah,
click off. I'm like, nope, we're moving, we're left swiping. We're
yeah,
left swiping on this. We're doing a thumbs down. That's definitely me.
yeah.
So along those same veins, what improvements would you offer industry leaders or influencers in how we could be more inclusive in the music space, especially in the rap and hip hop genres?
So I think the one of the biggest things people forget. So if you go to the very top, so the Jimmy Iovies, the Craig Cowmans, those folks who are presidents of the biggest labels and really running it at that level,
Yeah.
those people need DEI coaches.
Yeah. Right. They
Well,
need people like us.
yeah, like you. Yeah, like you. I don't know if I'd be the right person, but but they need people like you, because here's the reality is, I mean, if you're running that big of a label, and like Rihanna signed you and all these other acts, you're not involved or understanding like how much of an impact you were actually having on the world just by your business decisions.
Right.
Like if you let this artist run with this song and this message, you might just sway an election. Like that's
Yes.
how powerful some of these people are. And they don't understand. Well, they do understand that. It's more like they're focused on other things.
Yep. And
Inclusivity takes that back seat.
yes, yes. And I think that with society and how it's changing, and my hope is that it is changing on a sustained level,
Yeah.
that I'm seeing content that's definitely very different than content that was coming out 20 years ago. But you're spot on. What are the folks that have the money, that have the influence? What are they doing?
Right.
And I would say they need co-facilitators like us, because you know the game. So you can speak to the industry. I can speak to the anti-oppression and anti-racism parts.
That's a good one. Yeah, yeah.
So let's kind of recap, right? You grew up, but you were doing music, but it just never was fully satisfying. You kept on doing it. You got a huge win about 4.5 years ago. You
Yeah.
had your song in a movie, but it was still empty. It was still that voice in your head that was holding you back. And then you have a huge cardiac arrest. Is that the correct term?
Yep, sudden cardiac arrest, correct.
Sudden cardiac arrest
Yeah.
a little over a year ago. And you woke up from that embarrassed, but also it changed who you were. You weren't that teenage Kevin anymore. You weren't that person that had those voices that you weren't reframing, or those voices that were holding you back. And I also know that you have changed your lifestyle in terms of being much more peaceful, eliminating the noise from your life as much as you can. But there's a story that happened to you in the last year
Mhm.
where it doesn't matter how much at peace you are finding with yourself, you still have to deal with the external factors of being a Black man. So I
Yeah.
want you to tell us the story about where you were in Target. I believe it was over the summer. You were over at Target of all places, and Kevin's had this huge life change, and you have a pacemaker, is that right?
Yep. So it's officially called a defibrillator.
Thank you. I
Yep.
old school word. So you
Yep.
have your defib.
Yep.
So anything big could put you into sudden cardiac arrest again. I'm repeating this because I want listeners to really know that if Kevin's stress level goes to a certain point, he could go into sudden cardiac arrest. And he works very hard and has been to not be that 13-year-old kid,
Right.
to change his ways. So tell us the story of your visit to Target to grab some food and do some errands.
Yeah. So, girlfriend's in the car, and I just remember, headed into the store, and there's this one is a really big Target, so they have the metal detectors at the entrance. So on my left side here, there's a device, right, defibrillator, and I walk in the store, metal detectors go off, everything seems fine. The lady lets me in, I shop. This time, as I'm coming back out with my groceries in my hand, that same lady that was there and that was kind, she was a Black lady, she wasn't there. So there was nobody there to protect me that worked at the store to say, I saw him come in here.
Wow.
So I'm walking out. Metal detectors go off again. No employees around them. There happens to be a white gentleman there, about maybe in his 40s. And he decided in that moment that his job was to police me with his body.
And this is a fellow customer, correct?
White customer with groceries in hand. He decides to barricade my body right there like this, pretty much holding his groceries, and he just decides that it's his job or his duty to stop me. Wow. And he asked me, where are you going? And I said, I'm fine. Just look at the lady right there. She'll tell you. And the reason I said that instead of being upset, which I have every right to be, is because I unfortunately don't have the luxury other people have of getting upset.
Yes.
other people, you'll see videos online of racism and incidents happen, like Karen incidents, right? The gentleman who had the incident with Karen, he
Yes.
has the luxury of engaging back because an incident like that will not kill him, but an incident like that will kill me,
Right.
because my heart rate cannot go like that. So the nice lady came back finally, and then I could, showed my receipt, all that crap. I finally walked out the door, and he's still kind of not wanting to let me go. He's still kind of eyeing me. I'm already out the door. He's still eyeing me.
Mm.
And I was,
and you can feel that as people of color. We know when somebody's eyeing you because we've lived with it all our lives.
But it's. I want people to understand it's a lot different when someone physically within your space. It's not. I mean, we're in the middle of COVID, and he is, within 6 feet of me, like literally 2 feet, maybe 1 feet away from me. Like he's literally right here. So for someone to risk their own health because they're afraid of some black guy walking out of the store, it's just an incredible amount of fear for somebody to have. I told my partner when I got back in the car what happened, and we were just driving away upset. And then I called my mom. Yeah. It's upset, and that just, one of the first thoughts I had was like, I definitely could have ended up a hashtag that day if I had something else going on in my life where I wasn't in control, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah, and for folks that are on audio, Kevin was saying that this person was literally inches during a pandemic from his face. And I also want listeners to know that we talked about this, and Kevin is sharing because he wants to. So thank you, Kevin. I know that this is very, very difficult. But one of the things why I love Kevin, and he's definitely becoming a friend, is because he wants people to know about these stories and his own personal experiences so that we can elevate ourselves and be better.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important story to tell when you want to tell it, to let people know how real this is, that it does happen day to day. And also for me, what's important is because you have the defib, that this person without any weapons could have killed you.
Yeah.
Because they chose to play police. And this is where radical empathy also needs to come in. And you had your receipt. You had paid for your things. And I've had that happen too, where you're like, why is this going off? I literally just paid and walked across, and everybody saw me walk across, and somebody forgot to take off a tag, or that's definitely happened more than once. Or somebody, usually it's because they forgot to take off a tag, and they're like, oh yeah. I'm like, oh, sorry, quickly do it. And everybody's off. It's more embarrassing. But in this case, for you, it's not embarrassment. It was literally life or death.
Yeah.
And that's something that definitely needs to change. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And we definitely keep Kevin's heart rate very low and very steady because we need you, Kevin. And so you've shared so much with us. Thank you. So you do music still. So again, you made my music. So tell us a little bit about how you have evolved, because I think it's fascinating with your work that you're doing music, but you're doing other things that very much are inclusive. So let's talk about that for just a couple of minutes.
Sure. So, I kind of transitioned. COVID was an opportunity for me because now I have this new lifestyle where, I have a defibrillator and in a different, health situation. And so instead of being super stressed at a corporate job, I decided, well, I have a lot of skills. I have a lot of different passions. So why not? My biggest dream, I guess you would call it, that I'd always wanted to do was run my own marketing firm. And so one of the things I realized in my music journey is that everything I was doing for myself to get on these TV shows was really just a form of marketing. And that skill set that I learned, I translated it into building my own business and being an entrepreneur. And so I was able to successfully walk away from my 9-to-5, not have to be stressed every day, driving in, being around high stimulation, right? And things like that. And when you're in the corporate world, I remember, after my hospital stay, I went back to go work for a little bit, and I didn't tell anybody what happened. I just went back to work. And I remember how stressful that was for me.
Wow.
You know, I remember specifically, you know, I was in the bathroom at Microsoft, and I thought my device went off.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't tell the difference because I was so stressed. I couldn't actually tell the difference if it was the device or my stress.
Mm.
So I just didn't want to live that kind of life. I just decided I had enough and walked away and started my firm. And so I've been making music now as simply therapeutic, therapeutic only.
That's amazing. And tell us a little bit about your firm.
Yeah. So my company's called All Approach. Essentially, what we're about is creating authentic change through entrepreneurship. And the way we do that is by helping companies grow their business online. But really, if I'm gonna be super blunt about it, it's really my way of teaching other people what it means to be their most authentic self and going after their business the same way I did. That's really what it boils down to. And so that might be somebody who, one of my clients, his name is Vincent, and he like me, for decades, he'd been doing his thing with diversity consulting, just like I had been doing my thing with music, but he had never pursued it seriously or taken it seriously or given it that full attention it deserved, just like the 9 to 5.
Nice.
And so one of the things that inspires me is, I'm coaching him, and when we built his website, I remember about 3 months after he hired me, hired our team, he called me and he said, "Kev, I just did it." What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
Call me like that. What are you talking about? And he's like, "I just landed a $100,000 contract, first client out the gate."
Awesome. Awesome. Putting that energy in.
I was like, okay, we did this.
So great. What a great success story. Yeah. And you are a wonderful marketer and influencer and connector, because you connected with me first, even before the podcast was even anything of my dreams. You just contacted me. We had connected somehow from whoever, and we'd been connected on LinkedIn for a minute. And then you're like, "Hey, I'm putting this group together. And it's based on diversity, inclusion, and belonging specialists and consultants. Would you like to join?" And that was the start of this beautiful friendship. So thank you. Thank you, my friend.
The weird thing is that was started really because 2 reasons. One, because I was tired of watching my mom be disrespected, and she'd, been a PE teacher for like 35 years. And her dream was to be like Vincent, to be a diversity firm.
Yeah.
And I wanted to put all the people like my mom in the same room.
That's awesome, Kevin. Where can we connect with you online?
You can visit us at allapproach.com, and then all my handles are at It's Kevin M. Miller.
It's Kevin M. Miller. Yes. Follow him. I follow him on Instagram. So Kevin, as we wrap up here, what is one call to action that you would provide us for us to be inclusive in our lives? I ask this to every guest of mine.
Awesome. For me, it's put empathy into action. Because truly, it's okay if you don't have all the answers or know what the right thing is, but we all know what that real empathy looks like in action.
Yes.
And so instead of just saying, words sound nice, right? But really just take that action. Awesome.
And it could be saving someone's life, like my friend Kevin's, folks.
You never know. You have no idea.
You have no idea. How can we support you? Is there anything you need that this community can provide for you?
To be honest with you, just a lot of good vibrations. If you pray, if whatever works for you, just a lot of good energy for my health would be very appreciated, because sometimes I get drained throughout the day, and certain things take a lot more energy for me than the average person.
Right.
And so I just would love and so cherish that.
Vibe sent right now, my friend.
Vibe check.
Vibe check. Whoop, whoop. I love it. Thank you so much, Kevin. You are always a delight, and your calm demeanor is amazing. And, you know, for me, it's not a calm demeanor because you have to. It's just who you've evolved to. And I am so grateful we're connected. I'm so grateful for your music. Thank you so much for being on the Inclusive Storytelling podcast. You are appreciated, Kevin.
Thank you for having me.